Thank you, Kusi. Thank you to all members of the media who are here today. You will recall that when we gave you the preview of the NEC and NEC Lekgotla, we indicated that the NEC preceded a 2-day Lekgotla, which was cut to 2 days instead of 3 days, because we had to allow a delegation of the South African government to go to the AU. So we had 1 day NEC and 2 days Lekgotla. We received the report of the NWC, the National Working Committee, which actually put a lot of effort to explain the roadmap to the 54th National Conference of the ANC in December 2017. The National Conference will be held on the 16th and on the 20th of December 2017 in Gauteng. And in line with the Constitution of the ANC, 90% of delegates, at least, it's not 90%, it's at least 90% of the delegates shall be from the branches of the ANC. Elected in properly constituted branch general meetings, BGMs of the ANC, and the NEC was resolute that no person who is a member in good standing at the cut-off date, which is end of April. For purpose of the conference, our cut-off date will be end of April. Anybody who is a member of the ANC in good standing by the 30th of April will be allowed to participate in the life of the organization in branch general meetings. We actually elaborated on this issue and explained that if you are not appearing in audited documents of the ANC, but you can prove that you are a member in good standing, either with a copy of a membership form or a receipt, you will not be stopped from participating. Membership audit for the conference will take place during May and June. July and August have been set aside to deal with queries and objections and appeals. A proposed timetable towards the conference has been developed and will be circulated to structures of the organization. All proposals for the for the amending of the Constitution will have to be circulated to the branches by September 2017. It is a requirement that any proposed amendment to the Constitution must be circulated 3 months before the conference. That will give branches time to apply their minds to the amendments intended for the Constitution. And BGMs and branch biannual general meetings will be during September and October. In line with the NGC resolution, which emphasized that the branch as a basic unit of the ANC should be reinforced. And in fighting slates, we need to do something that will ensure that branches are given the right to nominate. In other words, when we nominate in the branches, we seal those envelopes, take them to a central point nationally, sealed as they are, and they will be opened in that point so that you don't have a consolidation of nomination at regional and provincial level, which basically tampers with the nominations of the branches. And that electoral commission that we're looking at will be put together at the center, and those sealed envelopes will only be opened at that center. The NEC Lekgotla was attended by members of the NEC, the leagues, alliance partners, veterans, and comrades representing structures of mass democratic movement, as well as comrades deployed to various functions in the state and state institutions. And the Lekgotla deliberated on and outlined the priority for the ANC. And all those priorities are handed over to the government as an input of the ANC and as a guide. So we'll take outcome of that Lekgotla, it will go to the cabinet Lekgotla as an input of the ANC. Economic growth, accelerated radical socio-economic transformation, land reform and redistribution, funding of higher education, fighting crime and corruption, as well as building capacity of the state, were identified as the key priorities of the ANC in the current year. On radical socio-economic transformation, we said that refers, because we've been talking about this term without really elaborating on what it means. We said it is fundamental change in the structure, in the systems, in the institutions, patterns of ownership and control of the economy in favor of all South Africans, especially the poor, and the majority of whom are Africans and female. And if you listen to that, it is in line with the long-standing commitment of the ANC that our main objective is liberation of blacks in general and Africans in particular. So we can't take off fairness unless that is seen in practical terms. Its components include creation of jobs, accelerating shared and inclusive growth, transforming the structure of production and ownership of the means of production, enabling the talents and productive potential of our people to flourish. At the heart of radical socio-economic transformation is an effective state that is decisive in its pursuit of structural change. So in other words, the focus is mainly all the time on the government as opposed to the state, where the operations are taking place. So we're re-emphasizing that we must apply our minds and ensure that the state is effective. And therefore, unless we have an effective state, transformation will not happen at the pace that we are expecting it to happen. Achieving this requires a fundamental shift from a pure capitalist state to a state-managed developmentalist economic underpinned by developmental public service. In other words, we don't think that we should just be apologetic that we are a capitalist state and therefore the state must manage change. And for the state to manage the state, it requires a developmental public service. And it's one issue that we're going to be focusing on a great deal this year, because half the time things get blocked at that level. Lekgotla identified the constitution, legislation and regulation, licensing, BEE and transformation charters, the national budget and procurement, state-owned companies and development financial institutions, as well as the government programs for redistribution as the tools at the hand and at the disposal of the developmental state to advance radical socio-economic transformation. So we've not just defined it, we have also identified tools concretely that must be used to transform the economy. While we noted that since 1994, the ANC government has recorded numerous successes, including expanding employment, formal and informal, from 9.5 million in 1994 to 16 million end of 2015, growing a vibrant, successful black middle class, normally you call it middle class bulge, the significantly reducing the number of people below the poverty line. Half the time, when we talk of the social security net of the state, we talk of it in negative terms, instead of actually quantifying the impact it is making in terms of dealing with abject poverty and taking millions of our people out of abject poverty. Much more still remains to be done in pursuit of this objective, the NEC Lekgotla resolved to accelerate radical transformation and disrupt existing patterns of ownership and control. On agriculture and land reform, we have resolved that we'll pursue industrialization strategies instead of depending on export of natural resources and raw materials with declining commodity prices. That commodity prices doesn't only talk about minerals, it also talks about agricultural commodities. Food processing should be an area of focus and therefore should add value on every product as an area of focus. Increase investment into infrastructure projects, prioritizing township and rural areas while providing generous subsidies to black industrial entrepreneurs to build new factories and businesses in the said areas. In other words, instead of being overly urban-oriented, we must create economic activities in the township and in rural areas. Actually, in dealing with this matter, we looked into the amount of just social grants that go to many of these rural towns. That money gets absorbed by major chain stores without showing anything in terms of economic activity in those areas. If you go to Kala, where I come from, all the money of social grant gets absorbed by Chopra Checkers, Boxer, Spy, and so forth. You don't see any circulation of money in that area in terms of farmers producing, having a market, and therefore that money circulating in that economic center. We said our ministers must begin to apply their minds to that reality. Defend existing jobs, create new ones by protecting and incentivizing domestic businesses and industries. This includes the developmental state purchasing productive poultry farms currently being sold off in a bid to save jobs and increase food security and production. We've been reading about many of the poultry farms being closed because of the heavy imports and dumping of poultry in our economy. We say the state must actually buy those poultry farms that are being sold and closed down, and continue producing. And that will not only require the state to buy, it will also, it means the state will have to find new markets for the poultry that is produced in those farms. Sustain commercial agriculture and increase agricultural contribution to the GDP through the incremental implementation of the Maputo Declaration and increased exports. Maputo Declaration is nudging governments in the continent to spend up to 10% on agriculture. We're very low on that. We say it's an issue that we should do, but we're saying it cannot just be the percentage of what you budget for without clear programs where you are going to spend that money. Number two, it is about, as we want to have new emerging farmers getting into the stream and producing, we should not do that by destroying what we have. We must sustain commercial agriculture that we're having and build new capacity in that sector. We commended the work of the Valuer General because in the first day in office, they have saved 50 million rand and we resolved to complete the land audit underway to identify the pre-colonial land patterns and to inform new legislation and land distribution. What that means in real terms is that we did the audit. The audit gave us a result that could not be analyzed further. 79-14-7, you remember? We say we can't stop there. Though nobody likes racial classification, but to quantify progress being made, we'll have to quantify what amount of land has been redistributed to blacks in general and Africans in particular in that process. And therefore, that second phase of the audit, we say it must be completed. On finance and banking, industrialization, manufacturing and beneficiation, we resolved that the NDP, National Development Plan, and the 9-point plan remain relevant towards achieving radical economic transformation. Further, the advent of the fourth industrial revolution has brought about an era of innovation, which should be a catalyst for economic growth and development. And in that regard, we committed ourselves that science and technology must be at the cutting edge of creating new economic capacity in our country. Half the time, we talk science and technology, we look into projects instead of actually appreciating that science and technology is about innovation. And innovation should be at the cutting edge of our economic development and growth. Lekgotla has called for the government to develop and implement a program for transformation and de-racialization of the highly concentrated financial sector in the interest of vast majority of our country. We are referring to the point that financial sector is dominated by what is called the Big Four. If you go to developing countries, you find out that there will be many banks, regional banks, town-based banks, sector-based banks, and we say you can't allow this concentration to be the state of our economy. Barriers to SMEs development must be identified and legislative and regulatory regimes redesigned to enable SME market entry and development. For your information, the budget for the Ministry of Small Businesses and Corporations is 1.4 billion. And therefore, the talk and the budget don't match. And we say in budgeting, the government must look into that and ensure that the budget matches the intention. Setting up a ministry is not sufficient. There must be resources. And one of the things that we've discovered is that when you do deal with SMEs, in some instances, you throw money that you never recover. But if that money that you throw, you never recover, translate into development of sustainable businesses, that is not lost money, it is money invested in SMEs. Legislative amendments to ensure implementation of the national minimum wage must be finalized in the legislation introduced in Parliament within the current calendar year. Talking about minimum wage for years and years should now be concluded. Government must drive local procurement and supply development, enhance monitoring capacity and consequence management for non-compliance. We must fast-track the licensing of the Post Bank and ensure that it becomes the principal distributor of social grants. And we said we've been talking about the Post Bank being a licensed bank, and the process and the progress made very, very slow. And we say the beauty of the Post Bank is that there's a footprint everywhere, and therefore, if you delay licensing it, it is at the cost to the underbanked and unbanked rural poor, where it has footprints. And we say the government must do everything it can to ensure that it gets licensed now. On mining, the ANC directs government to consolidate state mineral holdings, promulgate the MPRDA Amendment Act, implement the mining Pakistan agreement, and leverage DFI support for beneficiation. Mining license regime and charters must be utilized to facilitate BEEs, local procurement, the development of black industrialists and SMEs. Government must review and align the DFI's mandates with operating and developmental financing model and government strategy to increase lending to SMEs and black entrepreneurs at a developmental lending rate. We are raising this issue because we have asked for a more detailed analysis of the book of a DFI like the Land Bank, for example. How much of the Land Bank book is with commercial farmers, the established sector, section of the sector, and how much, very little, that actually gets directed at emerging farmers. And we say that should be done to every DFI because it is talk, no action. We develop a plan for implementation of the 2015 NGC proposal to implement wealth tax to enable stronger levels of infrastructure investment and skills development. And the government must review trade policy positions in light of global changes to support industrialization imperatives. On education, we called on the Higher Commission to complete its work urgently and on time. And we don't think that we must talk about extension or anything. It must complete its work on time, urgent. It is urgent that that work is completed. Further, we called on the Department of Higher Education and Training and relevant institutions to address the concerns of students who have not obtained results for last year and past years. That is the historic debt of students. And we think that one of the issues that must never stop a student from accessing results or a student not proceeding further with the studies, because a solution must be found on that issue, and a student must be registered to continue studying. And therefore, that is one issue that we have given to the department to look into. The Lekgotla directed the ANC to make its own proposal on funding of higher education and submit the same to the Higher Commission. So instead of depending only on comrades in the sector, there must be an independent proposal from the African National Congress itself. Further resolved that the ANC convenes within the first quarter of the year a summit on higher education and training with specific focus on reaching consensus on future model for student funding. So we'll talk to everybody who have an interest on that issue. On basic education, Lekgotla resolved to review policies and laws that govern infrastructure delivery and maintenance to enable greater local community and small business participation, eradication of mass schools. In a rural province like the Eastern Cape, you find that almost every contractor that works there is from outside of the province. It means that province will never develop. Local entrepreneur will never be grown from the lowest grading in construction to the highest grading. On the basic education, Lekgotla resolved to science and technology and innovation were identified as significant contributor to socio-economic development. Consequently, there must be increased investment in research and development. The NDP is talking of 5,000 PhDs per annum by 2030, and we think that that should remain a focus. College and universities must identify core skills that are needed by the economy, set targeted outputs. From this, a skills plan must be developed working with Human Science Research Council and CSIR, among others. So that instead of just saying we have this number of graduates, is that number of graduates that we generate from our universities talk to the skills needs of the economy, or there is a great degree of skills mismatch. On health, it has been agreed that there is a need to move beyond the pilot phase of the NHI. This must be part of a massive reorganization on the current health system through a radical redesign involving public and private health providers. On fighting crime and corruption, the Lekgotla resolved, among others, that government must lead in securing the national key points using our security services. Instead of allowing key points to be secured by private security, state must guard those areas. They're quite important. And Parliament should expedite the passing of the Border Management Authority Bill to ensure the establishment of a fully fledged border management agency. Damage to state property must be categorized as a serious offense, punishable by long-term sentence. There must be increased community awareness and participation to prevent constitutional gains on the right to protest, and government must implement the resolution to establish government security agents to ensure that all state infrastructure are secured by the agency. Corruption in both public and private sector undermines governance and the rule of law, as well as the authority and credibility of government institutions. Government must expedite the integrated anti-corruption strategy, enhance the coordination of all anti-corruption agencies, and improve the remuneration of corruption-fighting personnel. Quite important, because if you don't do that, you are making those people quite vulnerable. On capacity of the state and local government, our interaction during the mobilization for January 8th statement revealed that quite a number of concerns community raised during the election campaign have still not been addressed. Either the ANC municipalities have done little about this concern, or ANC councillors have not been active in forcing the opposition parties to attend to the people's needs. This is unacceptable. Lekgotla directed the Commission on Capacity of the State and Local Government to develop concrete proposals on how municipalities must be strengthened to be more proactive in addressing people's concerns. Therefore, resolved that there is a need for a stronger overarching institutional center that actively has the power not only to monitor and evaluate, but to also enforce policy adherence and program implementation in accordance with ANC policy and mandate. In other words, it's well and good for the ANC to say, monitoring and evaluation, show this and so forth, but there are no consequences for people who do not comply. We must strengthen that aspect. The state must proactively engage all sectors of business to encourage their participation in industrial expansion, economic growth, and job creation. We must review the macro organization of the state to reduce mandate overlaps and improve efficiency and effectiveness. Enforce the constitutional framework of government in terms of the structure, the configuration of government as a unitary state in line with Section 44 of the Constitution. Government must drive a program of professionalization of the public service, including teaching public servants the philosophy and ethics of a developmental state. Government must develop capacity to communicate effectively the mandates of the development state and its delivery program. Call for the aggressive revival of declining secondary towns as key industrial zones. This should include abandoned industrial sites, Butterworth, Timbaza, you can go all over the country. We should revive those areas. They played a particular role. Called on the departments and other organs that owe municipalities to pay for their services. Lekgotla has directed that these January 27 Lekgotla priorities must guide and enforce the forthcoming government Lekgotla. Doing so will ensure that this resolution move us closer to the realization of the radical socio-economic transformation. We'll be monitoring the movement from this Lekgotla to the cabinet Lekgotla, to the state of the nation, to the budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade SG. That was a very comprehensive report on the outcomes of the NEC Lekgotla. We're going to open for questions. I think there's a lot of programmatic resolutions that have been put forward, showing and demonstrating the ANC's seriousness on moving us forward. So I'm noting hands 1, 2, 3, 4. Is there a last one? I'll take 5. 5 Futswai, in that order, please. Thank you. Sam Carroll.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Priscilla, for the question. SG, you'd excuse me if I'm being mischievous, but can you please tell us what action has been taken?
Why are you deliberately?
No, the question has to be asked. Yeah. What action have you taken against your general manager of Luthuli House of the ANC, Ignatius Jacobs, on the implication of him with the so-called ANC war room? The recordings have been sent out, him speaking about the controversial Gupta family. And also, why now the radical stance on economic transformation? Is it because we are feeling pressure from opposition parties, namely the economic freedom fighters, who have been very vocal about the country's economic structure and the current conjuncture? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mahlatsi Gallens from News 24. SG, I wanted you to please elaborate on the first part where you're saying that nominations from branches would be sent directly to the national office. I just wanted to check who would then be in charge of that process and how would it work practically. I understand you're saying that it's part of fighting against the slate systems that have emerged and empowering the branches. And then just to add on my colleague's question, I mean, a lot of these things that you're talking to are basically decisions that are resolutions of the previous conferences by the ANC. And these radical decisions that Lekgotla took are 5 years down the line. Is this the NEC trying to redeem itself in terms of being able to go to conference to hopefully say this is what we've actually been able to achieve, when 5 years down the line you're still facing the same problems despite the resolutions taken? And the last question, I understand that President Jacob Zuma was quite firm saying that they should be able to take action against ministers that don't implement ANC policy. Was there anything in terms of what those practical steps should then be?
Number 3.
Good afternoon. Sefiso Mahlangu, ANN 7. SG, I would like to know what the position of the party is, or your personal reflection on Mr. Brian Molefe.
Not personal. What the organization?
Okay, what is the party's feeling on Mr. Brian Molefe being included into Parliament as an MP? I would just like an answer as to say what the party feels on his candidature for Parliament. Thank you.
Party with feelings. Number.
Molo Numbala, just to follow on what Samkelo asked about. Did the ANC Lekgotla discuss this ANC Black Ops disaster and the effect it has on the image of the organization? What is the future of your General Manager, Ignatius Jacobs? Because we have on good authority that he's been asked to tender his resignation or be fired. Is that true or false? Simple yes or no question. And what action is the party taking on this matter? Because
Why do you behave like a policeman now? Ask your questions.
So what action is the party taking on this matter? Because initially you denied, there's recordings out in the media now showing that your officials, your employees, members of the ANC knew about this. And what does this say about the ANC? Because if you're willing to seemingly bend or even violate electoral rules to smash the opposition, is the ANC's message not good enough to resonate with the voters that you need to tarnish the image of your opposition? Thanks.
Thank you. Last one in front.
Good afternoon, Nobala. You talk a lot on the state and what you need to do to achieve certain objectives. In your assessment as the ANC Lekgotla, do you think you have sufficient skills in terms of carrying out those programs? Because as I think one of my colleagues did indicate that some of these resolutions are not particularly new. So do you have people, maybe you have people in the form of warm bodies, but do you have skills, technical skills that are really sufficient to be able to really carry out all those things that you've spoken about? Because I would assume if that's not the case, that will remain a wish list.
Thank you very much.
You know, when you deal with a journalist from Jacaranda, you can pick it up from the question that he must still grow to be in the management. When you take action against an employee, you don't call press conferences about that. It's not done in the ANC, it's not done in SABC, it's not done in Jacaranda, it's not done anywhere. I think when we briefed you last time that we are dealing with that issue internally, that should be sufficient. If there any development in that process, we feel we must announce, we'll announce it. And I think we should accept that. Otherwise, we are expecting the ANC to conduct its internal discipline in media briefings. It's not done anywhere. It's wrong. As a former trade unionist, That is one area that I'm very sensitive to, because you can end up in the CCMA for actually making pronouncement on disciplinary processes of the organization prematurely. So the media must accept that. And that takes care of the question of whether this issue was discussed by the NEC. It's not an NEC issue, we're managing it. It's a management issue here for us. So I'm leaving that issue. I hope you will not raise any matter arising on it. Okay. The day Jacaranda calls a press conference when it disciplines you, call me to represent you. Okay? Okay. As an experienced shop steward, radical economic transformation is pressure from opposition parties. That again reflects the failure to monitor decisions of structures of the ANC. This came out of the 53rd National Conference. All that is happening is that we adopted that in the 53rd National Conference, we're working on it, we're beginning to give it definition, we're beginning to identify tools. I don't think that is a function of pressure, it's a function of beginning to deepen the understanding of the concept. That's why we have gone into details into what areas should be changed and be transformed, what are the tools in the hands of the state to effect that transformation. And that takes me to whether we have the skills. You know, when we took over governance in 1994, if we waited for a situation of no skills, we'll be worse off by today. Because all the time people preached that we must use the skills that are available. Basically saying we must maintain white management structures in the state. We broke that, we appointed people, mistakes were committed, but today I can tell you that we have a bigger capacity in the state to drive transformation. And all it requires is political leadership to be provided and push the state to implement those decisions. So the warm bodies, yes, they're there. But we must work together, the political leadership and the state and leadership there should be working together to implement transformation. Nominations to? Oh, okay. I'm trying to look. Okay. What we are working on is that as branches nominate, we must have the capacity at national level to monitor nominations at that level. We have 86 NEC members plus 24 ex-official members. 110, a capital of 110 can be anywhere in the country. It's a big structure. And what we're saying, all we're talking about is that there will be an electoral commission, which will be constrained by the way there is always prior preference of veterans being in that electoral commission all the time. You remember in Pulukwan it was chaired by Mamukawa, in Mangaung it was chaired by Tatumlangi. So, but it must be bigger and more mobile. And all we're saying is that when branches nominate, they must seal their nomination. Those nominations must be deposited at a central point. Branches, regions and provinces can observe in the opening of those nominations. But what we were saying we must outlaw in terms of the NGC resolution is the question of consolidation of those nominations at regional and provincial level in the process get tampered with, and you have a different outcome in the consultation. And the reason that we think that we say, if we don't do that, we are going to have a nomination driven by slates. And we say, if we are fighting slaves, we must take a practical action. That is what we're talking about, Matlas. Lekgotla is 5 years down the line. It's not 5 years down the line. It's the 23rd year that we are in government. So if you just say 5 years, you are understating what 23 years down the line. And we can point at how much we have changed the lives of our people in South Africa. Actually, I talked to a leader of a big business, who is not necessarily a friend of the ANC, in the current throwing of slogans, who is part of the monopoly capital, no, not promoter, white monopoly capital, you know. Who said to me, you know, Mr. Mandash, half of what you see in South Africa has been constructed post-1994. I say, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is education, whether it is anything, more than half of what you see in South Africa has been constructed post-1994. And therefore, it cannot be a question of redeeming ourselves. It's a question of accelerating delivery of service and rebuilding our country at an accelerated pace. Then the other question was the question of the president talking about steps taken against ministers. He should have said that in a meeting that you were in, I was not in that meeting. That's the reality of the matter. Because we had commissions. Now, in commissions, we discuss openly in commissions. There were 5 of them, 5 of the commissions. Now, if the president goes to a particular commission and he says that, you know, if he said that in a commission meeting, I was not in that commission. So it can be an issue that is a big issue. So anybody and the source who whispered to you wanted to put some paper in the information that he gave so that he is a valuable source. A feeling on including Brian Mlife on Parliament, I don't know whether that needs a feeling. Let me allow you, let me outline to you how people get to parliamentary lists, because that will help you understanding this, because if you don't, you'll imagine many things. We have 10 lists to parliament, okay? 10 of them. The first one is national to national list, which is the list that is centrally here. And it is half of our list in parliament. The other half is province to national. Okay, so that means each of the 9 provinces will have a list of parliamentarians who are going to National Assembly on the province to national lists. Okay. So that constitutes the list of the ANC registered with the IEC. You cannot amend that list before you finish 12 months. Okay. If I amend my list, the national to national, which is my category, it's in my office. If I amend it in September 2017, I can't touch that list before September 2018. Okay, that's how it works. That applies to the provinces as well. You cannot reprioritize the list as you wish. Now, if, for example, a particular province, which is the home of Brian Mlife, want to include him there, there are only 2 opportunities that can be there for him to be in the list first, even before he goes to parliament, because he's not in parliament list yet. So I see all the big article of Brian in parliament and so forth. There's no Brian in the parliament yet. But if his province, if I read the Sunday Times properly, the Northwest want to include Brian Mlife in its list, there should be 2 things that happen. It must wait for the anniversary of its last amendment. And at that point, it can reprioritize its list. If it prioritizes Brian, then he will be the first to replace whoever gets out of parliament when there is a vacancy. Okay? Or if its list is depleted, okay? You know, you have a list that is registered, there is first change in your list, it gets depleted, then you can replenish a depleted list with new names. That is another opportunity for Brian to be in that list. So it cannot be a question of how do we feel. If in the province to national he gets into that list, he will be in line to go to parliament. Then the feeling can only count at that point. At that point has not arrived yet. Okay, that's how it works. So if you want further clarity on that, you can follow up the question. But that's how it works, that's how it works. And there's no other ways, there's no shortcut. We don't wake up one day and put Brian Molefe on the list to parliament and he goes to parliament. It doesn't happen that way.
Thank you, Nabala. Due to time, I'll only take 3 hands in this round, and then there'll be the last 3. I'll prioritize those who haven't spoken. Sir, you're number 1. You are number 2. Madam, you are number 3. Sorry. You want to take? I could be the 5th. Okay. And Jenny, then you're number 4. Then we might as well take the hand that was here, number 5. In that order, please. No two less we've spoken. Yeah.
Joe Brock with Reuters. Hi.
Yes, please continue.
Were any possible candidates for the future leadership of the ANC discussed during the meeting? And if so, could you tell us who they are? And also, do you have any reaction to US President Donald Trump's controversial ban on travel from 7 mainly Muslim countries? Any reaction to that?
Okay. Number 2, Sam.
Thank you, SG. You mentioned the need to speed up the process of licensing the Post Bank so it becomes a primary distributor of social grants. Can you please give us comment on the ANC's take on SASSA's failure to prepare for a new company to be appointed to distribute social grants? There's a big risk that in 8 weeks, social grants will not be paid because SASSA has failed to prepare for that. Could you please comment on that? And also from your statement, you mentioned something about the macro-organization of the state. What does that mean in English? Please, thank you.
In English.
Number 3, yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Susan Comrie from the Amabungani Centre for Investigative Journalism. SG, I hope you'll forgive me for returning to the issue of the war room, but in Ms. Bolani's affidavit, she had said that she'd shared the report on the war room with Minister Jeff Kadebe in November. That's also confirmed by the recordings, which seem to suggest that Mr. Jacobs discussed this issue with the minister in November. And I just wondered, did the minister share this report or the details of the war room with anyone else in the ANC? If so, what action was taken then in November? And if not, does the minister's actions or his lack of passing that information on, will that also form part of your investigation and part of the potential disciplinary process? Thank you.
Thank you. Ranjani, number 4.
Thank you, SG, and thank you for allowing my question. The first is, you mentioned...
I'm protecting myself, Ranjani.
From? SG, you said in your remarks earlier that on the issue of radical economic transformation, you said the political leadership was needed to push the state. Now, does the NEC believe that that political leadership exists in the state, or are changes required to the political leadership in the state? And secondly, I'm not asking about the war room or the black ops, but I'm asking, has the ANC, is there any rules of engagement in terms of how your members interact with the public, with journalists, on social media and publicly? Because it seems that this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what has been happening around the ANC social media engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Down here. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ntebu. I'm with the SABC. With talks that there's going to be a cabinet reshuffle, and with the managing director of Standard & Poor's saying that if that happens, you're running the risk of being downgraded. What is the ANC's reaction to that statement? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nobala.
I want to invite those journalists who have not joined the ANC yet to join it. You know why? If you join it, you will get the documents of the ANC, you will know the processes and the policies. The NEC doesn't discuss candidates. Okay? Candidates are a function of a conference. And there are no possible candidates until they are nominated. Anything that you see now, I see 5 faces in the front page of the Star today. I can tell you all those 5 faces belong to what we call speculation. They will only be real when they are nominated by branches of the ANC in the post that they've outlined. Okay? So there was no way that the NEC would discuss possible candidates. There was no way. Okay? So that's how it works. Anybody who gets into those lists and get happy is short-term happiness until branches of the ANC have nominated them. Okay? That applies to everybody, including those who want to be in the NEC of the ANC. They can wish, they can circulate a list, they can do many things, but all those are just dreams until branches of the ANC nominate. Now, Trump and ban of travel. Hey, that is the President of the United States. You know, one time, somebody in disbelief said, what would you say if Trump is elected President of the United States? Many of you didn't believe that Trump would be the president. Huh? And when I said to you, America can elect anybody. At one point, they elected a president on the basis of him being handsome and gave that president 2 terms. Okay? So I don't think we should be excited about what Trump does, he's the president of the United States. What we should be worried about, what are the implications of the policy changes in the United States on ourselves? Now you see, we don't ban travel to Muslim countries here. It's the most free country when it comes to Islam. Okay. They say so themselves. They may not believe it, but that's reality, is that you never find a secular state like ours that everybody has a right to religion, okay, and many other things. So I think that where we should be worried is what will be the implication of the changes of policies by the Trump administration on us. Will it impact on our trade relations? Will it impact on our traveling? Will it impact? That is what we should be looking at. And if it impacts on our trade relations, for example, are we hard at work to look for alternative markets, develop new trading partners, and that's what should be preoccupying us. Trump changes rules on his feet. As on day 1, after 4 days, he has changed 20. So if we are going to be asked every time about Trump, he's the President of the United States. I'm sure if it was in South Africa, you'd all be writing, disaster awaiting. But you can't write that now, because he's the President of the United States. I'm leaving that now, okay? SASSA failure to prepare for social grants, again, that belongs to the government and the state. It must be addressed. One of the things that will never be allowed will be the first to march on social development is that social grant beneficiaries don't get paid because the state has failed to do its work. Can't be. But what it will do, what it is busy doing, I don't want to enter into that and venture into that because it's an area that I'm not familiar with. But if social grant beneficiaries don't get paid, you will see me leading that much. Okay. William Gogel? What is your follow-up question?
Yeah, you will lead the march if they don't get paid.
Yes.
What's your take on the possibility that the Net One contract might have to be renewed?
There will be process of renewing a contract, whomever's contract. Okay. Those processes must take place in government properly within the framework of the law. I don't want to venture into an English teacher, Gogel, to give you the difference between macro and micro. I'm not going to do that. I won't do that. You are just pulling my leg and you are ridiculing me, whether I understand the difference, whether I understand there is macro and there is micro. Macro, micro. Okay. The affidavit and recording on Jeff and Ignatius. Please allow us to deal with this matter. We're appealing for you to give us space to deal with this matter. We take it very serious. It's a serious matter to us. I would imagine that recordings and all those things will fall in what is called in disciplinary hearing evidence. If there are recordings and all those things, they will be brought as evidence to disciplinary processes. So I'm appealing for space to deal with this matter. It's a serious matter for us. Ranjani asked me a rhetoric question. Does the political leadership exist? What are you saying about me, Ranjani? What do you say about me? Utini Ranjani, what are you saying? Ubale political leadership ikona, utini ngat, what are you saying? No, the political leadership is not in the state, it's in government. It must provide leadership to the state. Okay. We have a cabinet. Or do... I don't know. That assessment belongs to you, not only as a journalist, but as a member of the public and as a member of the electorate. But the state must execute, the political leadership must provide that leadership. And what I'm saying, that in a department, you'll have various degrees of capabilities of those political leaders. Because you can't just have a general statement that it exists, it does not exist. There are capable ministers who are doing well. And where there is a capable minister, the state also performs because political leadership is there. Where there are weaknesses, it reflects on the state. And all we're saying is that there must be an increased performance by the state, and the political leadership is charged with the responsibility of driving that leadership. That is what Lekgotla says. On the social media interaction with journalists, social media is a social media is a chat group, I'm not there. And interact and tweet we interact in Facebook. Now, I don't know if there can be anything about social media interaction with journalists. Behavior in social media, my understanding is that don't break the rules in social media and say things that should not be said. Not only to a journalist, to anybody. Once you push that social media space to the extreme, you are running a risk of being hurt yourself in the first place, before you as a journalist get hurt, okay? So people must just be rational and be careful in entering that space. My daughter taught me this, you see, Dad, you see, social media space, you must be careful. This is the social media. That's how it is. Don't go there and expect to have different rules because you are Secretary General. If you're in that space, you enter that space at your own peril. So, and I made choices. Should I remain in Twitter? Should I remain in Facebook? Or should I wait for Kusela to come back and to me, man? There's this debate in the Facebook, and people was eating me. Or do I want to be there myself and throw mud around and get mud all over my body? It's a choice I can make. And there will be no special rules about journalists. Because you also, as journalists, Ranjeni, throw mud at people sometimes. You say, so what should we say? Should also develop rules about what journalists should say in the social media. We're in that space, all of us, as participants, okay? That's it. Reshuffle. One, the reshuffle, you know, I was talking to somebody in a very important department of the state, and I said, why should the rating agents enter a debate about reshuffle and a succession debate of the ANC? And I said, to me, that smells mischief. It looks like a rating agent that doesn't want to rate us on what to do, but a rating agent that wants to tell us what to do. And that cannot be acceptable. We're not working for a rating agent, we're working for the country. The rating agent must rate us on the work we do in the country. Once the rating agents begin to tell us who should be the next president, who should be the next what, then it is entering a space that is dangerous. I normally want people to enter that space and say, you're entering a dangerous space. If you do it at your own choice, and don't come back and cry. So some people are beginning to respond to that Mr. Rios, who's it? Rios of Standard and Poor, because he have entered a space that doesn't belong to him, it belongs to many other people who will respond to him. I think it was a mistake on the part of him to enter that debate.
Thank you very much, Nopala, and thank you to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. That concludes our press conference. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Those were live visuals from Luthuli House here in Johannesburg, and that was the ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe briefing the media on the ANC's recent ANC NEC Lekgotla, which wrapped up yesterday. Now, he addressed a range of issues that were topping the agenda, including, of course, the impact of Trump's decisions and the orders that he has signed and changed since starting in office as a new U.S. president. He said, though South Africa should only worry if multilateral trade deals are threatened by Trump being in office, but for now, those are worries that we shouldn't have. Here at home, he said that the ANC resolved that leadership issues needed to be addressed in an amicable manner within the party, and he also spoke about the ratings agency matter, saying that they won't be told what to do by the ratings agencies. He said that Mr. Roos's comments were in error on his behalf. Let's take a quick ad break. I'm back with more news on top of the hour.